Map that I was talking about last time we were taping, that there are no world problems, or time before last, there are no world problems, but there are problems that are being externalized. The psychologists would say that there seems to be problems such as the world problem of danger to the environment. But in fact, there are no such problems. There would be no such problems, there would not even be the term, were it not for the fact that individuals here and there are wired up in such a way as to take the problem as a personal problem. And then it is said to be, in many cases, a world problem, a larger problem. It's not just my problem. I'm pointing out that this affects everybody, which you cannot linearly argue with. But still the fact remains, were the person, the individual, not wired up in such a way as to take the problem personally, there would be no problem. So there would not be anything called a world problem or a large problem unless the person was wired up that they took it personally. That's where we were, if you recall. There is another facet, in fact another side, except it begins to impinge upon another dimension, so I was going to say facet instead of another side, because ordinary consciousness, if you're not up and running already, since we've been here talking now 2 or 3 minutes, so you'd take another side as to be the other side. Not the other side, another side. So, another facet. And that is this. All power is local. This is a kind of variation of all power. It's kind of a spatial variation, but again, threatening another dimension, but is a kind of complex spatial variation of all power is ad hoc. But I am specifically going to try and turn your attention in such a way that it makes more profitable sense tonight within the term that all power is local. This amounts to the fact that in certain places, that if somebody had apparent power, they had the apparent ability to exercise some kind of power, it is always strictly a local matter. It is a local possibility. Let me give you an example. There is another planet that I've never spoken of, but there is a planet where this is true. And I'm going to put it quite distinctly and succinctly take it as a law, but this is a statement of fact in a certain area regarding the way things are arranged on this particular planet, and it goes like this: that talk won't change anything except oneself. That is whether they have such a law put that way or not. And I'm not saying whether I am aware of it or not, but even if they do not, I am giving you a very valid reflection regarding a certain area of the way in which this planet and its creatures are structured. That talk won't change anything there except the talker, oneself. To try and, let's drag that back to planet Earth, and to wrap that up in the kind of verbal, revolutionary, exploratory package with a little expansion on it to make it more edible here, would be that if there is any visible power or ability to act, it is immediate, it is local, and it is just for oneself. It is, if, what I'm saying, if you're following, if that had any validity here, let's like it does for a second. If that were true, the only way that one could act, if there was any power to do anything, it's got to be local. It's got to be immediate, as opposed to thinking, planning, of action. And by immediate, I don't know what I'm going into or not, but it has to fall within the realm of being immediate. And it has to be on oneself. Thus, it would have no effect over any question about whether you could help other people, whether you could inform other people, whether you could enlighten other people, whether you could make useful recommendations to other people. Now, as you might expect, since I put it in the law on that other planet, that would be the fact in a world where that was true. That is, that talk won't change anything except oneself. Then in such a world where that was valid, where that was in effect, none of the creatures could in any way, as we would call it if we were there, help one another. They cannot push one another into making some sort of desirable change. They cannot proceed on the basis of some sort of guilt that they can apparently impose upon someone else, or where they would say that they want to change. It is not that this is in some way psychologically unfeasible. In the kind of world that I am describing, it is simply not possible, because talk won't change anything. So it's not a matter on such a world of one creature telling another one, listen, you would be better off to do so and so, and I'll tell you in fact how to do it. It's not that there's some flaw in that. It's not that the other person might be so psychologically crippled that they cannot take good advice, or it would not be a matter that the person trying to give the advice is so psychologically flawed themselves, so egregiously ego-centered that their advice is always self-serving. It's none of that. Because see, all that would be true on planet Earth, even in California. But the kind of world I'm describing where it would, in fact one place where it is true, but the kind now that I'm sort of describing theoretically, of a kind of world where it would be valid to say that talk there won't change anything except the talker. Then it's not a question of will talk possibly help someone, and when it won't, there's some psychological reason, there's some personal reason between the advisor and the advisee. It's simply, I've covered it all when I gave you that verbalization, that there, talk won't change anything. It's not open to question. It's not open to trying to lay the blame, because there is no blame. It'd be like saying, well, all right, on our planet, we're under, among other things, the law of gravity. And if I let go of this rock, it'll fall on the floor and make a noise. It's not good or bad. You can't say it's somebody's fault. You'd be foolish. You'd be outside the mainstream of ordinary intelligence to let it go and it made a loud noise and upset someone, woke up a child over here asleep, and for you to blame it on somebody. All right, who's here? Is anybody here even remotely kin to Newton? I don't know who's responsible for that noise. All right. In the same way, it's not open to any question on this particular planet that I'm talking about, this particular place. Talk simply won't change anything except the talker. If you tried to apply this, if you tried to drag this foreign element onto this planet, if someone tried to, if you tried to bring that into your own solar system, your own inner solar system, then you would be faced with the fact that you could not exercise any sort of meaningful, direct power over even your whole universe. Do I have to fill it in with crayons? Even if you could bring it into your own, it still would not have a universal application in you. let me try to turn it another way instead of trying to draw it out more verbally in a cruder fashion. Still pondering. What I'm telling you is true in one place I know of, that talk won't change anything except oneself. Well, let's go ahead and just say for a second that we're now talking about the planet Earth, and that such a notion had some widespread distribution, that this had been said. And it is not insane, it is not irrational to the Earth intelligence, and so people could hear it. Now let's say that a large number of people have heard this as some sort of theory, somebody's notion. Now whether then this would have any provisional validity, or whether it would in fact be infinitely fallacious, would be of no concern with a would-be space traveler, with a would-be explorer, with somebody trying to do this kind of stuff. It would have no effect. It would not concern someone and their usage of it once they heard it. And of course then we're assuming that they tried to do something with it. Insofar as, that didn't get too complicated, did it? If it was announced here on planet Earth that this is a new theory, this is the Professor X theory, that talk won't change anything except oneself. And there's debates about it. Someone who heard that on this planet, a few people here and there assuming there would be such, they would hear that and go, there's got to be something there. And something just tingles their little spine. They would, if they were going any further with it, if it got past the point about thinking about it and tried to do something about it, they would have to very quickly get past the point, because there would already be a debate going on, as always, about everything, if it gained some kind of worldwide attraction, that there would be debates that this is true, it's not true. Then someone attempting to do it, once something seemed to struck them that, ooh, there is something potentially useful there, they would have to immediately get past the realm, the arena of any dialogue about it, as to whether, well, is this true or not true? That doesn't matter if you're going to use it. If it matters whether you're going to use it, you'll never use it. You'll never use anything if you become part of the debate out in the ordinary forum on this planet. A real, I kind of like that since I said it, space traveler, would-be space person. Don't get carried away, but a would-be space person. Because you don't have to really. Well, never mind. I'll leave it to you. A real would-be space traveler has got to be able to take foreign, inapplicable, impossible thinking and in some way force it into 3D action here. What's the alternative? Well, the alternative is you already know everything you're ever going to know. The alternative is all the ordinary knowledge you already have. That's not belying the fact that there's always a new stream of facts and news and three-dimensional data coming out. But insofar as you trying to travel, insofar as you trying to go somewhere, you already know everything that you're ever going to know. And we're assuming that in some peculiar way you are correctly drawn to this, then you have got to face up to the fact that all the information that's normally available, you hadn't missed a thing. Just because you didn't finish getting your master's degree in sociology, or just because you always wanted to go back and major in math, that doesn't matter. If you're correctly drawn to this, and if you are really a would-be Buck Rogers, I can tell you, you can just relieve yourself, not literally of course, but you can relieve your mind. You can go back to school if you want to. It's a fine hobby. Everybody should feed the intellect, just at the ordinary level. But you did not miss anything. There is no information here on this planet as to how to get off this planet. There's not. There never has been. If there was, it'd be self-defeating, among other things, as I've tried to get you to see, that psychiatry couldn't work, or it'd be out of business. Religion can't do nothing, no system, within a less than complete existence. That is, three-dimensional reality, which is a part of something else. Systems in there cannot succeed at what is their apparent purpose. If they do, they disappear. There cannot be information available readily, easily available on this planet as to how to get off this planet. It'd destroy the planet. And of course, I guess some of you suspect I'm not talking about simply about physically men being able to fly to the moon. I'm talking about how to be able to get outside this universe. And I'm not talking about just outside this universe. You can't be able to travel. There's not information about how to travel from your own universe. It would be self-defeating. It would be, if there was some way that the so-called penal systems of the world could actually reform those given to their care, then, of course, all of the penal systems, all the wardens, all the good guards, and all the neat people that work there, en masse would go and kill themselves. They have slit their own throat if that could happen. The information as to how to escape your own solar system, your own inner universe, is not available. Now back to where I was. So if there is information available, which I'm tired of handing around because, why else are you here? There is information around, except it's not information. It's not in a book, and most people don't know it, and those who know it just kind of barely know it. That wasn't very good. Realize there's not much you can say about it. But here it is. If there is such information, it is always going to be exotic. Not on this planet. I don't mean that the information is hidden over in Tibet or India. Of course, you're in Tibet or India and grew up over there. I keep using that example, I guess, but now New Age people or people with a low dose of wanting to do this, a low hunger, believe that the secret probably lies in a hidden cave in Tennessee. I wonder if it does. Well, anyway, I'll check it out. When I say exotic, not that kind of low-level reflection that the information is always somewhere where you're not. Because remember, the homegrown information is never in demand. We've been through that. I've tried to get you to see that. It's exotic. It has got to be foreign to this planet, to this universe. Or it is not what you're looking for. Because the information, if you're talking about energy, the kind of energy, if it were widely distributed on any planet, but we're speaking about ours now, since that's all you people give a damn about, you parochial-minded people, but the information available to people here insofar as to how to travel is never going to be self-destructive energy. That is not the way life works. So the information about how to escape from this universe is not available in this universe, or if you want more specifically, how to escape this planet, the information of how to do so, and there is not on this planet, because it would be literally self-destructing energy, self-defeating information, and that is not the way things work. So you have got to be able to take information that is foreign, that is inapplicable, because I've told you there is a planet, not planet Earth, but there is a planet where talk won't change anything except oneself. Not here, that's somewhere else. But I'm hinting as strong as I can without saying it that it has some validity, some possible use, or why the hell would I bring it up? So, it's foreign. But that's the only kind that has any particular value to somebody attempting to do this. It's not only foreign, it's inapplicable. And it's darn near impossible. All right, damn near. I just hadn't said darn in 10 or 15 years, and I wanted to say it. Another aspect of this, it affords, if you can do it, it affords a wider galactic view of the fact that all the ideas of there being some kind of antipodal true and false, of literally divided down the middle, which on this planet there is. It's absolutely necessary, as we all know, that on this planet are quite clear dichotomous cuts between the true and the false, all the way from what seems to be morals to scientific laws, theories, that there are things that are true, and for everything that is true, there is some aspect that's false. Everything that does not fit in to that definition, to the categories, to the understanding of the public in general, if it's a little more flaccid than scientific specifications, mathematical reality, but still there is that true divine between true and false. But can you see on the basis that if talk won't change anything except oneself, and that to ever be able to go somewhere, to escape the limits of your own inner universe, you have got to have information that is not only foreign to your universe, but is in fact inapplicable, then do you see, listen quick, then do you see that all ideas of things being true or false are meaningless, but not because I keep saying they're meaningless, and not meaningless in some way to try and annoy the church or religions or the scientific community, but it's meaningless on this basis, that that which may be pertinent, that which may be visible on one planet, within one universe, within one solar system, may be invisible, impertinent on another. And if you have any awareness, if you had the intelligence, or the awareness might sound better, right, it's the second, of two planets within a locale of which you could be aware, let's just say within one solar system, and that reality, just one aspect, not total reality, but just in one aspect, like over here on this one planet, talk won't change anything except oneself. And another planet, in an orbit, not a fair away, that you can be aware that they're both there on this other planet, that is not true. There's no morality involved. There's no question of enlightenment. There's no question of a superior intelligence. It is the reality. In our own solar system, I'm not trying to make this too strange, the atmospheric conditions on planet Earth are our reality, per force. If they were not that, we would have no reality, because we wouldn't be here. And our reality, just insofar as the atmosphere itself, is not the same reality as that which is the reality presently on Mercury, Venus, just our next door neighbors. It's just an accepted fact. Nobody argues with it. It's not right or wrong. You don't say, well, wait a minute. You say that the makeup of the atmosphere, what there is of it on Venus, is so much ammonia and so much whatever it is. And somebody, a scientist, somebody at NASA says yes. You say that's not true. That's incorrect. And they can say, well, you know, we have landed, we've sent probes into the atmosphere enough, or we can do it through certain kinds of spectrography, that we know what's there. I'm sorry, it's not. It's not true here. Well, so what's that got to do with it? Well, it's not true here, so it can't be true there. Well, you understand, just not even a NASA scientist, but an averagely intelligent, middle of the bell curve, ordinary person, if they heard you say that, would figure you have fallen way outside the bell curve. No, you're just talking nonsense. Because what's true here doesn't have to be true on Mercury. But notice how strange it sounded a couple of minutes ago when I first said what I said. That's why I went in to try and make a crude example, because most of you sat there, and some of you on tape even, looking sort of dumbfounded. It's not dumbfounded, it's just totally unexpected, and it really has nothing to do with the garden variety of walking around living here on this planet. But all questions of something being true or false as important as they are here, because if suddenly you saw or smelled something funny outside a building where you were, and you said, we need to check the atmosphere, something out there, there may be some poisonous gases out there, true or not true, you would want to find out. If somebody maybe opened the door and went, yeah, something smells, wait, something's wrong. close all the doors and windows until we can make a check. It would be important whether somebody's idea that there could be some noxious pollutants out there in our atmosphere right now that could kill us if we go outside. It's very important as to whether that idea is true or false, right or wrong. But all questions of absolute right or wrong with information becomes meaningless when you understand that what is true on one planet is not true on another planet. Now remember what I started out last time we were taping, mentioned to you that you have your own universe internally, that you have your own planetary systems, you have your own neighboring planets inside of your own nervous system. But all questions are rendered far beyond the moot veil of moot. There just is no such question. When you realize that what may be true, which some of you should be getting close to know why for a long time I kept wanting to make you consider that there was some different reality that I meant behind using the word true, and then I'd go, not true, I mean correct, that there's a difference. And I'd say what was true in the city is not true necessarily out in the revolutionary bush, out in the outskirts of the universe, somewhere outside your planet. That to talk about true becomes meaningless, you ought to say it was correct. Because for every true there is a false. But it is absolutely beyond the uselessness of the word moot. Because it's not a matter of true or false. Once you move from one almost encapsulated environment, such as, I'll continue this for the time being, let's talk about a planet. That what can be true on planet Earth, the correct state, that the human intellect has measured it and named that such and such is true. Let's go back to the atmosphere itself. That such and such is the true nature of our environment, is made up of such and such parts, this and such. But that is not correct on Mercury. Now that is important information at the ordinary 3D level. But it is meaningless information once you get past the 3D level. If you are trying to break out of the gravitational hold of your own internal nervous system, of your own planet, it is beyond meaningless. It's just meaningless. There is no antipodal difference between true and false, right and wrong, but I don't mean it in a moral sense, but true and false, once you take into consideration a foreign planet, that you're now not talking about on one planet, one state, one city, one 3D reality, because there it can be of extreme life and death pertinence as to whether something is true or false, whether the atmosphere outside right now is polluted to the point to be morbific to us, or whether it's not. But it will not travel. The power of all visible things is local, including knowledge. It's local. And once you try and take it outside the locale, the mind can do it. It's wired up to do it for the ordinary people. But once you take it outside of there, all of the basis, all of the confines, all the reflections of what that knowledge was on one planet is just, I'll say meaningless. I don't know a worse word to tell you. But you should see from the example I gave, if you try on your own, that information about planet Earth, about any particular thing, they may have some things in common. But about any particular area, you could find another planet somewhere nearby that was not true. But nobody notices that. It's just simply that's the way things are arranged. But notice, there just seems to be a spatial distance. That, all right, something is true here on this planet, and we go to our nearest neighbor. I can pick out the moon, for that matter. And so, all right, we can go to the nearest planet, star, satellite to us, and in certain areas, what is true here is just simply not true, and no one with any walking around intelligence that hears about it, let's assume they accept the scientific knowledge as we have of the moon or some other planet. They say, all right, something is true about our atmosphere, our gravitational force is not true there. You don't question it. But, in other words, it can be true, but all you got to do is go to the next nearest star, the next nearest planet, and it's not true. And there it is, the moon or Venus, you can see it. And what is true here is not true there. And it's only few light years away, or a few 100 billion miles away, that you could get there in your lifetime. And so what's true here is not true there. Okay, everybody accepts that. But all you got to do is move in space. And so, now forget about Venus. Forget about the moon. Now I want to tell you people, there are things here that are true, and as you would call it, they're simultaneously not true. And what does the mind do? What does your own planet, what does the center of your own intellectual solar system do? It's as though the moon has some kind of extreme rash of sunspots, or maybe begins to burp or hiccup, begins to feel faint. It cannot be. Now I've tried to kind of line you up into a seeing position to get to this point tonight. Can you see that something is wrong? Oh, not something is wrong in ordinary life, but something is wrong with the way in which the intellect measures. Something is lacking. Because anybody, if you were following that, anybody with average intelligence will accept the fact that there are things that are true here that are not true on the moon. And you can walk outside and look, and let's just take their word for it. Trust me. There are things they found out, the different gravitational force of the moon. Less gravity on the moon. The atmosphere is different. That you look right out there and things that are true here. I mean true to the point that they got to be true or you wouldn't be alive. That the atmosphere of our planet is such and such, and I can't remember right now what the percentages are, but if I read them out, all right, our atmosphere is made up of certain parts of this and that. And I said, that's true. And everybody said, I know it's true. We're all read enough to know that that's true, and it's got to be true, because if it was changed outside just a minuscule redistribution of those elements, we'd be dead. And so that's true, and it's important. Now, so right up there, the moon, you know that's not true. You go, yeah, I know that. So it can be true in just a place you can see that you could get to. It's not true. I mean, there's no particular conflict. Nobody even sees anything strange about it, and there's not. They go, all right. A matter of distance, you will accept, the human intellect will, that things can be true, not true, things can be true and false at the same time, things can be applicable, inapplicable, simultaneously, and nothing strikes you. All you got to do is move in space. Move your intellect in space right now. All right, forget the moon, right back here. And then you tell, all right, there is no real dichotomy. There is no meaningful true and false here. You're nuts. Because there cannot be a true without a false, which the ordinary intellect, there can't be. You're right. But how is it that all I did was move your attention from the moon? We pointed the moon, everybody went, yeah, I know that there's, what's true here is not true there, in the area you mentioned. That's right. Now, take your mind and draw it back from the moon now, and just forget about the moon. All right. Now, just look at me and listen, all right? Right here, there are things that are true that we can describe, and everybody goes, yeah, they're true. Now I can describe something else that sounds like, without any doubt, that is different, and I say, and this is true. Well, they can't both be true. All right, look back, just look at the moon, it's just whatever number of miles away it is. Then, it can be true here and not true there, right? Well, yeah. All right, now, right quick, here we go. Look back, now look back to me, forget about the moon, all right, that can happen here. It can. And all I did was just move, and I didn't move you physically. In the sense you think, I just moved your attention, your intellect, from there to here, and you can go from being an absolute mystic, that, well, yeah, that's, even would be proud of me, that something can be true here, and it's not true right there. A place that we can get to. Mystical. An update from last time, an expansion. Remember when I was talking about that there was a planet where they do not attempt to solve problems. They can't. They don't even think that way. They don't talk that way. And of course, I'm using our language in describing these other places. But you recall, I pointed out that they do not even attempt to solve problems. What they do is deal with issues, continuing issues. You recall that I was saying that they would not try and solve the problem of inflation. Which here, if we say that, what we mean is solve the problem in inflation. The headlines are not, they don't have much room in most papers. What it says is, and what people think, solve the problem in inflation once and for all. All right. On this planet, they don't even think like that. It's not solving problems. If they had inflation, something that we'd call inflation, and it pops up, they deal with a series of continuing, perhaps, but a series of arising present issues. You recall that? And I tried to sketch out and hint to you certain things about it last time. But let me point out what could be another purpose of that. Now I'm having to take some of our earth reality and transpose it there for the sake of making a point, if you follow it. And it's this. I could say that, if there was some similarity between that particular planet and ours, I could say that part of the purpose of things being so arranged, that is, that they do not even deal with attempting to solve problems, but only try and work with issues as they arise. Now I could say that part of that purpose is, are you ready? As an attempt not to waste D-force. Assuming that they, in a similar situation to us, that we've got always three flows of energy going on, that there is a tripartite dance going on with everything that is alive on this planet. By them not attempting to even solve problems, they don't attempt it, they don't think about it, could also be seen as an attempt not to waste D, not to waste the necessary resistance to all, at least from our view, three-dimensional stuff. There's always got to be that kind of proper resistance. Now, if people had some knowledge in some way of what I've been describing as C, D, and E force, remember that, which, relatively speaking, at any given time would appear to be like a constructive flow, constructive force. C, D would seem to be, from certain views, especially from a constructive view, a destructive force, a resisting force, something that trying to hold on to the status quo that does not want change, does not want some new creative something done. In other words, be resisting the D force, and then the E force is that which seems to be irrelevant to that particular situation of the C and D force engaged in a push-pull, attempting to do something, and then certain forces, certain systems saying, no, 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 no. I could get anybody, if they would listen to that, and I could make it sound perhaps more palatable if I took more time to ordinary intelligence, but I could then get them to say, all right, there would be a real purpose, and there could be a quite useful purpose in attempting to conserve C. That if we are talking about, if their intelligence will say, if I hear what you're saying about a kind of constructive force always in the midst of things, always trying to improve life, improve man, improve things, then yes, we need to protect and conserve C. But nobody ever thinks about protecting and conserving D. And I'm telling you, or hinting to you, that to take that reality of that planet where they do not even attempt to solve problems but simply deal with issues, you could see that one possible purpose as being the attempt to conserve D, which you got to. Just nobody wants to think about it. We're not wired up on this planet. Of course, insofar as E can safely look after itself since it's never under attack. We got to turn the tape over. There's a handful of things that have either occurred or they're still fairly hot topics or interesting topics. As life lets out this kind of these periodic ideas, and when I say ideas, you'll see I have something specific in mind, but there's some examples I won't go ahead and mention because most of you, surely all of you, got some knowledge of them, at least as much passing knowledge as I'm going to cover. But ideas that just flow out. They just turn them loose out into the mainstream of life, even though they may apparently come out of the world of specialized academia. But then they become out in the marketplace. And three or four. In your lifetime, information, sociobiology. You know, that was a hot one 6 or 8 years ago. That genes really, probably, I think was the strongest that the academics that did it, they wanted to say that there is strong evidence that genes are affecting not only what biology and sociology and psychology and physiology believed, but very good proof that genes may be determining what seems to be the unique world of man's intellect and social habits and institutions. That was hot. And now we've got the guy calls it the Gaia effect, the Gaia theory, that amounts to that life in some way has created and continues to sustain itself for its own purposes, for itself, and it looks after itself and it heals itself regardless of what men or other creatures do. We got the uncertainty principle, you remember? It says down at a certain level, given certain theoretical, even practical maps, as we probably won't call them now, of the subatomic world, but you get to a certain level of matter and you cannot really measure and say where things are while simultaneously saying what they're up to. Well, all of you. The electrons don't seem to be anywhere until you measure them, and then they're only there while you're measuring them, that kind of thing. And the mathematics of chaos, I guess, is the latest one, that many things that seem unpredictable, what they're hoping for, may be in some way kind of predictable, but it's on the basis of chaos anyway. That sort of the suspicion is that you shouldn't be so upset by chaos, because at least chaos may be, if not predictable, kind of expected. All right. Well, I assume surely some of you know I'm no expert in the field by any means, but it is now respected cutting edge of theoretical mathematics, and I think some physicists are trying to drag themselves into it, or vice versa. But at any rate, those four things: the Gaia theory, the mathematics of chaos, the uncertainty principle, and sociobiology. From certain views, and some of you may have read about them at the time they happened, or may be reading about them now, but from certain views, the information, the theories they had, but the information that they came out with would seem to be, from certain views, very clear and cogent. That, my God, I mean, here's two guys, or whoever it was that wrote the first, were given credit for establishing the term sociobiology, that, my God, this information makes a lot of sense. I mean, they were trying to show how the apparent humanity of humanity, the ability for some people to give up their life for their children, wasn't any kind of religious thing. It was a genetic basis of a race trying to preserve itself. That the parent, perhaps, the story is like of Abraham giving up or prepared to slaughter his kid, was really representing the fact that the DNA of man, that the older generation would physically perhaps give up their life to save their children, because the other way around ain't going to work. That if the parents are too old to reproduce, then parents, mothers, the idea is a mother or father, but a mother especially, would throw down herself in front of a sword or in front of the firing squad to save her child, was the race itself. Forget things about, well, what a great Christian woman, or what a fine Jewish mother that was to do that. It wasn't that, it was genes making them do it. All right, you would think, from a certain view, and it did happen at the time, that there would be a lot of people who go, Jesus, I never thought of that. Now, I didn't read the book, but I saw it out on the newsstand. It was a nice big fat book. The guys had PhDs in their field. And for a while, it was in all the magazines, and everybody was writing about it. And it fell right into the forum. People took it up, and almost as fast as somebody could get to a typewriter and printing press could run, there were books refuting it. Where'd they go? What happened to it? You never hear more about it. Now, on this planet, most of you by now know the general area in which I'm trying to point your attention, but on this planet, we're not talking about that this has any, per se, long-range effect that is that kind of information from that book or from those guys would get you out of your universe. It's not that. What I want you to see is that life lets out information that from one view, and even as I said, it will happen for a moment or so, that sizable numbers of people go, that is breakthrough information. That begins to explain almost everything. And where is sociobiology today? It's passé. Nobody even mentions it. The kinds of information, the Gaia theory, the latest one I guess, or chaos at any rate, those kinds of things with many people, ordinary people, scientific people, specialized people, and it's no offense to them, it's the way things are, that these new ideas that from some views would apparently have serious consequences is what I mean by cogent information that, hey, this could rearrange everything that we think about ourselves. The uncertainty principle. It's as though this happens, that life continually tests itself through the intelligence of humanity that lets this information out to see whether it can, at this level, assimilate it. And notice, even when it apparently is almost breakthrough information, such as if you just took just what little I've recounted about the general theory of sociobiology, if that were suddenly was accepted by the intelligence of the planet Earth, what would that have done to things? Well, among other things, it would make ordinary people feel even more enslaved than they are. People would believe, people would think that they had even less freedom than they do now. And yet that's exactly what that book said. Now, as I say, I didn't read it, but I know how things work, and I know that they covered themselves because I know how intelligence works and that kind of information. That I'm sure that they played games, they didn't know it, but the energy was running in such a way that they probably had to keep saying that there are certain statistical proofs that would lead one to believe. But the general theme of sociobiology was that everything that goes on is simply run by non-speaking, little old molecular genes in all of us. And even if it comes out and apparently building artifacts of a religious nature, constructing edifices to science and religion and art, is not what it appears to be. It's our genes making us do it so that the genes can keep reproducing and stay alive. And the rest of this is just kind of icing on the cake. But down there is where the flour and the eggs and everything's going on. All right, from one view, even the kind of stuff I've talked about, the kind of stuff that you people should be thinking of in your own kinds of study of the world and looking around, you could say, well, that just about covers. Now, what else can you say? There is the problem. Because if that were accepted as information, even though life puts it out periodically, and I just brought out 4 good ones that's done it throughout its life, throughout human life, but here in your lifetime, there's 4 great ones that any 4 of them, well, that's sociobiology is a great example, since I started that if that information were, if people went, well, that about explains it, they're right, that would about explain it. But then what would happen? And yet life continues to almost go, you know, playing this kind of Punch and Judy show, as I call it, it's almost as though periodically life will turn around with Punch and Judy and holler, hey, Punch, and Punch look around, and Judy kind of jump up like this to where Punch can see, hey, it's the same hand over here. In other words, almost life wants to pull up its dress to where you can see what's under there, and it's like it does it to see whether people can stand it. Of course, here is the viscid and tricky part, is that sounds like I could even be playing some kind of ordinary philosophical or anti-religious game of some kind, or say, well, that's the kind of thing, what it sounds like is saying, well, sometimes God, if we're talking that way, that sometimes God will kind of come out of the heavens and stick his nose down or his face and to see what happens, see whether it scares the hell out of man or whether you see, it's not that. It's not that life does this, because it's not something foreign to life, you got to remember. It's doing it in its own universe. The way I started out telling you this, if you were listening, is it's almost as though it lets this information out to test itself through human intelligence, which is serving a particular purpose in itself. It's not life doing this to man, it's life doing it to itself, but it apparently happens through man, that it lets this information out to see whether this would be useful to me if I said this to me and I believed it, would that help me? Well, that is not the right way to describe it. That is still flawed, but it's close to that. It's not like life actually pulling its dress up to see how it scared the hell out of humans. Because humans are not outside of its dress. There's nothing to see. It's life doing it to itself, and yet it lets out from one view. If you could get off this planet and look at what I'm talking about, which some of you can, that information, you could say, if you didn't know any better, you could say, hey, life's about to fuck up. Life is about to absolutely let the cat out of the you-know-what. Because if too many people hear that and go, well, Jesus, that's it. You know, close up the sharp, Darlene. Let's go home. You know, sell the camper. It's all over. There's no. And yet life continually does it. Well, 4 big times. I could name others, but 4 big times in your lifetime is allowed information that if, and originally it hit many people. It went, oh my God. But notice, the uncertainty principle now is just, whoever thinks about it. Well, nobody, of course, thought about it much when they heard it, but it is now simply in the world of particle physics. Sociobiology, I guess, by now is absolutely discredited, I'm sure. No, it's just been dismissed. At first it was resisted, which everything is, but if it's not resisted, then it's worse than that. It's like dinosaurs. As I told you, it's like something outliving its usefulness. It's not just now argued. There's not people making their reputations resisting, playing D-force. If we looked at sociobiology at one time as being an attempted C-force, people are not resisting it, they just dismissed it. It's like the scientific community does to us, astrology. No, who's going to waste their time? Is somebody with a serious scientific reputation going out on a lecture circuit and take his crusade to attack the Gene Dixons and the people that write horoscope? They wouldn't destroy them, they destroy themselves. Nobody resists it. It's just, they dismiss it. All right, that's what happened. And yet there for a few seconds, for a few moments of Earth time, here was like life did say, hey, what if genes are everything? But that's it. What seems to be the socio life of humanity, the psychological life and all that, is just another manifestation. It's no different than the operations of your liver or the operations of a crocodile's liver. It's the same thing. The genes in all of them are striving to preserve themselves. And that's it. The rest of it is just the way it goes, the way that particular creature goes about it. And a bunch of people went, oh my God, this is it. No, a bunch of people heard it and went, what a bunch of crap. Wait a minute, I got to write a book. Oh, this is wrong. But those who went, oh my God, that's it. I'm staggered. Where are they? It's like a test. It's just one way for me to try to describe it, that life puts out to see, can I stand this through humans? Can I use humans' intelligence to let this information to expand things in a certain way? Well, consider it. If old, ordinary, planet Earth intelligence did think that its domain was absolutely inalterable, which would be sociobiology. I'm just giving you a thumbnail but valid sketch. What if it did think that its domain, its own universe, that is human intelligence, you, ordinary humanity, believe that? Or what if it believed that basically it's going to prove to be absolutely unpredictable, the mathematics of chaos? Or what if it believed that its domain, its life, is ultimately unliable to stable measurements, the uncertainty principle? That is, when you get right down to what matter is, the matter that makes up matter that's visible, that you get down there, and everything we know about predictability, about stability, about actual existence, forget it. That there is no permanent, stable, reliable measurements. What would that do? Or if you lastly, in the order I'm doing it now, that Gia theory, that if human intelligence, ordinary intelligence, was faced with thinking that their domain had its own extrinsic, that is not human, outside itself, had its own foreign an unfathomable agenda. That is, that life is up to something, the forces outside of me are up to something, and they got their own purposes. Now put all that together. If the earth intelligence, the intelligence of humanity, did believe that its domain, its universe, now you're going to have to take this, remember the fish and the water. There is no out there or in here. The universe, inalterable, sociobiology, unpredictable, the mathematics of chaos, unliable to stable measurement, the uncertainty principle, and the universe, and in here, has some sort of unfathomable external. That is, forget what I'm thinking about, forget what I think I want or humans want or say they want, forget that there is another agenda that's foreign to us, that's underway. What would happen? Not only, I put it crudely to start with, pretty simplistically, that men would feel even less free than they are, but if that were to happen, I would have to point out that human life, human intelligence, which is what really makes it up, would cease to be a party to the C and D energy dance. There would be no humans, even in thought, not just action, but even in thought, of attempting to make the invisible visible, to do something creative. And of course there'd be no, since there would be none of that, there'd be no people, no energies resisting it. The C and D, the two basic ones that you've got to have, even if you can't see the E, if you can't see the background of the universe, even internally, even in institutions and human relations on this planet, the C and D would just be gone. If the kinds of energy, that is information that I detailed as sociobiology and etc., that's been available and came out in your lifetime, if any of those, much less all four, were taken, that energy became common, that was the common thought of the planet Earth, they would cease, humans would cease to be a part of a CD energy transformation. Thus the universe, as you would know it, as humans would know it, would cease cooking. Things would not be hopping any longer. How much time we got? Insofar I was mentioning when I started this part that I said we had lived through the introduction, even the invention of the term sociobiology, the Gaia theory. When I say that, like the uncertainty principle, I say we have lived through the introduction of, it was before our time really, I guess, wasn't it, in the 20s, but at any rate, we have lived through generally the introduction, the acceptance of the uncertainty principle, which is part of the subatomic world. When I say that, or when anybody says that, when I said that, what is actually being said? Am I saying that we live through the reality that an electron cannot be measured and positioned until it is measured and positioned, and then it's only true as long as you're doing it? Is that what we live through? Or did we live through men, the human intellect, saying that this is true? You people on tape, let me, if I must, I'm not trying to play with words. I'm not trying to be verbally coy or pretentious. That's right at the heart of the limits of three-dimensional reality. It's right at the heart of the origins. You're at the Garden of Eden of your own nervous system, if you can follow what I'm pointing at. There is something there. It's not to pull on you some sort of unanswerable conundrum. But when I say we've lived through the uncertainty principle, and let's say I paused there for a minute and looked, and all of you nodded. That what you meant was, I generally know what you mean, the uncertainty principle and subatomic physics. You mentioned it. I've read about it. I know what this. I could describe it. I don't know much more than that, but yeah, all right, we've lived through it, right? That is, we're still in it. Does that mean, am I saying and you agreeing that yes, we're living through that right now, down at the subatomic level, and just everywhere, that there is no really defining, at least of the electrons, but of subatomic material, there is really no saying. We can say that this cup's here and this gem clip's here, but when you get down into there, what makes up the cup and the gem clip, down at the particle level, you can't say. You can say the gem clip's here, right? But inside of there, you can't say where anything is because it's nowhere until you say it's there, and as soon as you quit saying and measuring oh, it's there, it's not there. Yeah, all right. Are we saying that that's what we're talking about, that we live through, that we are living through the time of the uncertainty principle? Are we saying that? Or are we saying, or me saying and you agreeing, that we live through the time that the human intellect says there is such a thing as the uncertainty principle, and here's how it works? You want me to conclude with, maybe let you wrap it up for me to say, is that a valid question? Is there a difference? Well, I don't want to make it too easy. There's got to be a difference, or you couldn't even make a dichotomous question out of it. For me to say, well, does it mean one or the other? Of course, always remember the world of two does not necessarily. Remember what Kyroots pointed out, that if a guy asks you guess which hand it is, that's no guarantee that they only got two hands. For me to keep saying life is playing Punch and Judy and does things like, is this true and that's true and it's the same thing, I only got two hands. That's all I can hold up. But that doesn't mean that that's all that's going on. But there is something, there is information there, if you can even ask, when you can point out that, such as I did, that are we talking about, and then would you be agreeing to, that we are in the time of the uncertainty principle, that is an operation, or are we talking about that the human intellect said it was? And I'm not inferring that the human intellect said it was and they're mistaken. I'm not saying that. Just accept that the uncertainty principle is what it says. I'm not saying that in some way they don't know what they're talking about. But when we say we're living through it, are we living through it happening? Or are we living through humans have said it's happening? That the human intellect has said this is what is happening. The validity, the usefulness of this, is not in some way tied to the strange, curious world of particle physics. I'm talking about what goes on in your planet every day, what goes on inside of your own nervous system every day. And you don't understand that there is always a question there of, am I doing what I'm said I'm doing? Am I living through what I say I'm living through? Or am I living through what I say I'm living through? Did you miss it then? It's the same thing I was just talking about the uncertainty principle. Am I living through right now what I'm living through? Or am I living through what I just said I'm living through? Are they the same thing, or might there be another planet, or might it even be applicable here, a place where action and thinking of action seriously overlap? And that's where such questions as this, it seems to be a valid question, and yet there are no answers. What if the question itself is simply a pointing out of where action and thinking of action have overlapped? And the human intellect, as I've tried to depict to you by human eyesight, is not equipped to see anything else. It's binaural sight, it's binaural thinking. Then all right, it's either true or not true, or we're talking about, all right, it's one or the other, and I'm not sure which, or maybe nobody knows which. What if that is the answer? As I keep trying to hint, not here on this planet, no. But if you can get off this planet, then the question about, well, things here has got to be true, or they're not true. I mean, that's the definition of true. And I said, well, look, it's just over here, just the moon. We could get there. If I still had that 49 Mercury I used to have, we could get there, hardly before you knew it. Just a couple of six-packs, and we'll be there. And we get there, and what's true here is not true there, and you don't find that strange. Well, certainly not. What if that is the answer? Okay, that's the end of the public tape. Back rolling. All right, I just wanted to say this is just for the groups here and out of town. In the last few months I've received a couple of questions back to a subject that's always fit, if not to be tied, to be touched, are questions that have to do with this, that somebody wants to know how they're asking for personal suggestions or advice and ideas of how to deal with situations when they have been absolutely mistreated. And I want to bring this up again because the questions offer such, what does NASA call it, the partial opening of a window of opportunity to fly that they can only launch under certain conditions. Let's just assume, right quick, I'm running out of tape, but there's no question that everybody goes through this sometime in their life, that by any definition, by any reasonable feel and thought, somebody has absolutely mistreated you. Somebody came up, perhaps somebody that you had helped before, let's do that, somebody, and for no particular reason you just did it, and they come back and ask for some more help, want to borrow some money, and they agree to pay you back at such and such time. And at the date you ask them for it, or sometime shortly after, and they just say, I'm not going to pay you back. And for whatever reasons you're not prepared to whip their ass or to put them in jail, or you don't know what you have just been mistreated, or that somebody lies about you to such a way that hurts you specifically and it's tied directly. You've just been mistreated by all three-dimensional definitions. You are less than human not to feel mistreated. You are less than human not to want the situation justified, not theoretically, rectified. You want justice to prevail and you to be unmistreated. Or you want the people to realize the error of their ways. You want something done. Everybody's been through this, either with strangers, friends, family. I guess it's good the tape's running out because I can do it real quick without beating around the bush. This sounds, to some people when they first hear it, I know. I wouldn't know anything if I didn't know that things sound strange, but it almost sounds too simple. It almost sounds like it has some kind of religious overtones off somewhere, or it has some kind of psychological or extraordinarily humane attempts. And it does not. It's as mathematical as chaos. It is as uncertain as the uncertain principle, which is very certain because of what it names. And that is this. If you can find a way, and I've given all kinds of hints forever, and even told you direct things, but if you find a way not to wrestle with the person, religion wants to call it forgive, and it's not really forgiving. But if you can find a means not to do that, you have one of the single opportunities in your life to be able to control the dialogue in you, the C and D forces, but a dialogue running through you, that there it is every time. Let's say that the person lives next door to you, or they work next door to you, and you see them almost every day, and every time you see them, part of the dialogue goes, you dirty mother. Just everything it says that you have been mistreated. I'm not questioning that. You borrowed money from me, and I've done things for you before for no reason. I had no vested interest, and I just always liked you, and now you have just absolutely attempted. You said, I'm not going to pay you. You knowingly mistreated me. All right, let's just take that as a given that they did by any definition on this planet Earth. Is let that go and refuse to let that become a monologue. That stays one voice, and all it is as personal as it is to you, and I know it is. I'll tell you again. It is to that part of you that's saying it and the part who's listening to it. But that is to say that that person mistreated you. All right. You're saying no more than that person is human. Not that particular person, because this is not religious, and we're not trying to take up for the person and say, well, they had their own problems. Fuck all that. I don't care who it is. Just plug in. I don't mean that person that did it to you. I'm using that person in the generic sense. That, all you're saying is the sun shines on this planet. You're saying it rains sometimes and sometimes it doesn't rain. You're saying what goes up must come down. He, she mistreated me. All right. And then not let that become a monologue, that is a statement of fact. They did. Except it wasn't they. It rains. When it rains, Kyroots told you this, when it rains, it rains. You know, when it doesn't, he didn't point this out, but I thought maybe you could plug in the rest. When it doesn't, it doesn't. He mistreated me. If you can find your own way, which is right close to you at any time, it's simple, it's direct, But it's not let that. Don't wrestle. Don't try to explain him away. Don't try to explain, well, I should have known better. None of that. Because as long as you do that, you're still dancing with the dialogue. You don't explain, well, I should have known better. Never mind that. He should have known better. Never mind that. I'll never lend money. Never mind that. Just don't do it. And if you don't, it is, in most people's lives, a singular, I don't mean the only time, but it's unique in the way they use it today, unusual opportunity. And enough of you have done this, I can guarantee it. Enough of you already know it. If you can do that, the times that you can do that, and that person, there's still a dialogue, there's still the knowledge that the guy cheated me. He stole, he did it under the guise of borrowing, but he stole X thousands of dollars from me. It's there, and you don't dance with it. That will bring a warm feeling, when you can do it, to your heart. And you didn't even know you had one. To your nervous system, the rest of your life. It's what religion, at a very low level, wants to talk about forgiveness and how great it would be if we could be more like the gods. It's got nothing to do with gods and religions. It's got something to do with energy. It's got something to do with the universe is constructed. But that, in a sense, I'm not saying that you should do it, and nobody wants to lose $1,000, and I don't want you to. But in a sense, it'll be a bargain. You will almost, as strange as this sounds, it'll be very impersonal. But I got to say it in a personal way. You'll almost have a warm spot for the person. You won't really. You'd always want to whip his ass and get your money back. But when you can do this coevally, while one thing is true here and something else is true on Venus, you can do that and still have like a warm spot in your heart, because it will be one of the kinds of shocks that go into your nervous system that's going to make a lasting and telling difference. And you will, every time you think about it, part of the dialogue will go, that damn bastard. And another part of you will even smile. I don't mean that you won't go back and say you forgive him. Nothing. It ain't anything to do with that. It doesn't mean that in some way you think, well, I do forgive him. You know, fuck forgiveness. It got nothing to do with that. That's part of the ordinary dialogue. It's if you cannot dance with that, not let it become a monologue in you, you will, in a very curious, and it's impersonal, it's unearthly, you'll have a kind of warm spot, not really for the person. You will not be unglad that the whole thing occurred. You may still want your $1,000 back, and I don't blame you. But you will not be disglad. It is strong. That's why religions are so tied up in. That's why life lets out that energy, and they all over the planet, all kind of little small kooky cults. But the major religions, you know that, talk about the power of forgiveness, and boy, it'll stand you in good stead with a big man when you die. And it is, you know, just godly to forgive. And of course they can't, and then they admit, well, none of us can. If you're going to be a space traveler, you can. You got to. Because that kind of thing will keep you grounded here. Not the money, not the desire for revenge, but it will just keep you grounded to this planet. And it's right close to you about how not to do it. And I've told you, I just got through telling you again. You don't wrestle with it. You can't shut off the dialogue, but that's one part. And you can stop the dialogue from becoming a monologue in you. If you can't, you've wasted every second you ever spent fooling around with this. And so I'm assuming that you do know what I'm talking about. It just seems to be hard, and it's certainly unnatural. And it takes a kind of information I'm giving, plus it takes a kind of effort on your part that is, in fact, foreign to this planet. That's why Christians can't forgive. Muslims can't forgive. Jews can't forgive. Nobody can forgive, and our religions say you got to forgive. Because it's foreign. It's from another world. It is. You want me to end dramatically? Some of the tapes already run out. I can say it's strong medicine. It's great medicine. It's liberating medicine.